Welcome to Roots of Representation, a podcast series brought to you by Knology, a leading organization creating practical social science for a better world. The podcast series is a part of our larger National Science Foundation funded project called Black Rep for Kids, where we delve into the power of storytelling in helping young Black children prepare for and tackle the challenges of climate change. If you're interested in learning about how we can build a brighter climate future for Black children, their families, and their communities, you've come to the right place. Let's get started with Roots of Representation, the podcast centering Black climate story worlds for young minds. Hi, I'm your host, Ed Green, and I'm thrilled to take this journey with you as we collectively discover ways to increase and improve the representation of Black voices, characters, and stories in children's climate change media. Our guest for this episode is Tulani Thomas. She's a parent, a corporate attorney turned children's book author, and social entrepreneur. And Tulani is the creator of Tutu's Green World, LLC, a green lifestyle company for all ages. Through her work, which includes the book Tutu's Green World, she introduces green habits to young children and encourages them to live eco-friendly lives. Tulani Thomas, welcome to Roots of Representation.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're really happy to have you here and to get a chance to talk with you. We've invited you to share your personal journey and experiences of bringing children's books and stories to the market that address social issues such as STEM, climate change, and positive representation of young Black children. In particular, we'd like to talk about the ways you use creative storytelling and the related hands-on experiences to spark conversation and inspire change and use the power of climate media in shaping young Black minds. So, to start us off, we'd like to ask you about your work, how you came to it, what inspires it, and how it intersects with the discussion around climate change.
Yes, sure. Well, like you said, I was an attorney. Before that, I was an accountant. So I was definitely fully immersed in corporate America. And what changed me and my path were my children, quite frankly. Having children is like putting a mirror up to yourself, and you look to see how do you want to walk this world? How do you want your journey to look? And how is that going to not only impact your direct future, which is your children, but others, right? Other children. And at that moment, I was blessed to be in a pretty strong financial position, and I decided not to go back to law and to really fully immerse myself in how I wanted to leave this earth. And in raising children, I knew that I wanted to continue my healthy career path, I should say my healthy journey. I was raised a pescatarian. They didn't even have that word back then. And I knew I wanted my children to not only be healthy inside the house, but healthy outside of the house. And that included living eco-friendly inside the home and outside the home. And I knew that there were other mothers that felt the same way. So when I was looking for materials and resources to support that lifestyle, to support that ethos that I was going to raise my children in, I had a difficult time finding them. This was back in, I guess, 2009, 2010. And we weren't having those dialogues. And I definitely could not find any books that had Black protagonists. So I decided, why not? Let me take a stab at it. One of my former clients was Essence Magazine. So I knew a little bit about the publishing industry, but it was enough for me to try, right? And I decided to self-publish Tutu Goes Green. And it really, honestly, Ed, was just a project about, a book. I was like, let me just put this book out there and I'll use it to read to my kids. And I'll do a couple of book readings and that's it. And honestly, it took off. I was getting calls from schools. A lot of libraries were reaching out. And the questions that I was getting, it wasn't just about what was in the book. It was just everything. Like, well, as a mother, what should I do? As a teacher, as a caregiver, Can you explain what global warming is? Like how it was just so many questions, and I realized that what? Why not make this a green resource for everyone? And that's kind of how I got started.
Wow. I'm just really so glad that we have you as part of the series because as we've been trying to think about how to talk with others about this and how to get others to think about ways they can become engaged, I think you have such really concrete ways of approaching it as a parent and someone who's concerned not only what happens inside your house, but what happens outside. So, what have been some of the more common challenges you've seen Black children and families confront when this climate change
Hmm.
topic comes up?
Yeah. Well, definitely with Black children and families, we don't see this as our issue. We don't see it as our issue because we don't see us as problem solvers in this issue. So, a lot of my hurdles when presenting this to Black schools or schools that have predominantly African American, students or organizations that are catered to that community, they don't see the importance, or they're trying to figure out how will this best fit into their budget over, or take priority in their budget over other topics such as health related issues or mathematics. And what I say is it's all related. It all comes down to the environment, right? When we talk about eco-friendly living, when we talk about living green, we're talking about STEM, right? We're talking about health habits. Black children have the highest asthmatic rates. The rates of Black children are 13, I think a little over 13%, compared to white children, which is around 7%. And that's in the United States. So when we're talking about, health conditions, when we're talking about, um, even economic issues, right? That's another hurdle. They see it as fancy to live green, to buy organic. But we don't realize that if we don't figure out a way to incorporate into our lifestyles, we're going to continue to see the climbing rates in cancer in our communities, diabetes, all of the other health concerns. And one of the hurdles, is big hurdle, is the economics. And how I do it is I have workshops that show how we can eat green, we can eat eco-friendly on a budget, right? How we can use solar energy, or we can have clean energy on a budget, right? So I think that that's like, you're spot on with that, where we can't ignore some of the hurdles that our community has to embracing a green lifestyle. We have to embrace them and show them that no, no, no. What we're prioritizing over green is actually a part of green. Like you can't. It's one and the same. We can't talk about health issues and not talk about living eco-friendly. We can't do that. And what I tried to do with Tutu's Green World, with the company, and specifically with the children's books, is to show Tutu. Tutu's a little Black girl that looks just like you, or is your cousin, or is your neighbor, and she's looked just like you, she acts just like you, but she's living green, and this is how she's doing it. And I feel like it promotes a sense of belonging and empowerment because the kids see themselves, right? The parents see their daughter, right, their little niece, and therefore it just, at least it opens up the door to the conversation.
I think that's
And then once I'm in the door, then I'm taking off.
Yeah, I just think that's so important. And this issue of, the disproportionate impacts, even though there is a disproportionate impact, if you don't see yourself as part of, the overall plan to find solutions as well as to deal with creating the lifestyle, that can cause a problem. And I'm really glad that you said that. Sometimes, with this whole idea of how children come to understand themselves in relationship to the world. There's a saying: "If you can see it, you can be it."
That's right.
So
That's
every
right.
time I hear you talk about Tutu, I see Tutu as representing the way in which one can be seen as as a child, as African American, as someone who is concerned, but also somebody that can help me to sort of maybe do some things a little differently. I love that. So
Mhm.
as a media maker, as well as working on the various educational and STEM focused areas of your lifestyle organization, what do you think media makers should be doing to help children understand about climate change, especially those that are maybe younger than the middle school age? What can we be doing?
Oh, yeah, definitely make this very daunting and, quite frankly, detailed and difficult topic digestible. Climate change is hard for adults to understand. So we have to put this information into digestible bits to where children are going to be able to comprehend. But then we have to make sure that it's interactive and it's full of adventure, of discovery, teamwork. We have to bring in all of those other intrinsic values into the storytelling so that instead of it being didactic, we're like sneaking in those messages behind the fun, so to speak. So I think that's super important. I think that when we are conveying these climate change issues, we have to make it attractive, make it colorful. Like the actual presentation has to draw them in, whether that's with media. When you say media, it encompasses everything, right? Audiobooks, picture books, animation, right? um, Characters, even the characters, like the characters have to, quite frankly, they have to be relatable. They have to not only look great and be fun in looking, but they have to resemble who those children are and who those children see in their everyday lives. Otherwise, they're not going to really be open or even give it a chance. So I think that's
Yeah.
something that media makers should take into consideration.
Yeah, I've also as I come to sort of delve into some of the work that you've been doing and how you've incorporated Tutu into that. It's that there are these interesting and engaging experiences where children are doing things that I get so excited about.
Yes, that's the
Um,
interactive
so,
learning
so
part.
what are some of the things that Tutu helps kids to sort of think about and do, and even the adults who work with them? Because
Hmm.
I know you create some very interactive ways for children and adults to engage.
Yes. So we have the children's books, and the children's books is a great way for children to see, a talented child that has STEM knowledge and how that character is using that knowledge to solve environmental challenges, right? But it also, like, so seeing that is not only providing agency for children, it's also providing agency for the adults because you have a child that's making a change. So the children, like, I can make a change as well. And the adults, it doesn't seem as difficult for the adults, right? But we also go a step further and we incorporate, I do a newsletter and through my website, where in my workshops that I do presentations at, that's where I'll tie in, how are we utilizing our food waste, right? And how can we involve the entire community, entire household, um, to lowering our food waste, to starting composting programs and recycling programs, not only in the house, but also wherever you are, whether it's a school. I also show green arts and crafts activities. So, with some of those, cereal boxes or some of those plastic containers, because, sometimes we can't get rid of the plastic, you know, it seems like it's going nowhere, but, the plastic is everywhere, but we can definitely try to avoid it going into you know, um, the recycled heaps and use it for arts and crafts or reuse it, right? That's where the three R's come into play, right? So I'll do that through green arts and crafts activities. I do it through green recipes. I'll do food demonstrations where we can lessen our food waste, make healthier meals, make organic meals on a budget. I even go as far as with the adults, showing them how some of their consumer products can be a lot more eco-friendly, how they have purchasing power, and to examine, like, let's read those labels a little more carefully, right? Not only the food labels, but some of the consumer products, and show them how that is, affecting, that is going green, that is living green, because it affects not only themselves, but affects the environment. So there's like different ways in which I try to be a little bit more holistic with tying in the green living.
Yeah, I once again, I think these are really concrete. But the other thing you're doing too is sort of bringing together what kinds of things help us to care about
Yes.
ourselves and
Yes.
our health and well-being, and how we care about those things that help the earth to be healthy. And
Exactly.
so, for younger kids, I think having that sense of care for oneself in relationship to the earth sort of helps them to be able to move into a direction where they're able to have more concrete understandings of things like how what we do as people
Hmm.
can impact ourselves, but it can also impact our earth. And there was somebody not long ago. I was reading something that said that we should really encourage younger children, particularly, to learn to care about these kinds of things
That's right.
before we get them involved in trying to cure the problems of the earth.
That's right.
Because if there's no connection, it's back to what you were
Exactly.
saying earlier. If
Exactly.
there's no connection, you don't really see how does this impact me.
Right.
So
That's
I
the
think you've
why.
given some really, really concrete ways of helping to bridge care and concern for ourselves and our earth. So, what kind of changes have you seen from the conversations your work has sparked? So, have you gotten a sense of how Tutu's world is impacting young Black children and their families? I mean, what kinds of things come up in the conversations, just anecdotally?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I definitely have many stories, but um, so I remember a few, like when I first started, this is what helped me prompt to expand to from just a book to actual business, was a mom saw me in the grocery store and I was using one of the reusable promo bags that we have. It was bright yellow. I would give it out with the children's book. And she stopped me and she said, "Wait, are you Tutu?" She said, she said, "Are you Tutu? You came to read to my daughter's school and she won't stop bothering me about turning off the water when when I'm washing the dishes." And I'm like, "Really?" So I was like, "Yes, I'm glad to hear that," because I was mortified that she was running the water while she was washing her dishes. So that's when I realized, like, oh wow, But since then, another mom that her and I, her son and my son attended the school together. They have a composting program. She has an actual composting company, and she started it after I did mine. And I mean, I'm not going to say like I was the reason, but I feel like it was almost like a trickling effect that it's kind of it changes the mindset of the community that you live in. Um, I've noticed over the years, and I like to think that Tutu's Green World is a part of that movement. Over the years, we've seen just an increase in the conversations around going green, right? In my community now we have a green fest. We didn't have that 5 years ago, right? And I'm there, of course I participate, volunteer, and help organize it. But I've seen my children, even in my home, I've seen a difference. It's something that now that they're teenagers, they understand the why. Like, why is mama doing this? And I hear them talk to their friends even in the conversation. They'll say different things like, "Oh yeah, we go green. We're green. We go green in this household. You can't don't throw that plastic in that recyclable bin because we sort the recyclables in our town now. And it's a trickling. It's a Tutu has an effect because of I think the behavior, right? Like it changes your behavior, and when you are changing your behavior, you're an example, right? So automatically, the people in your immediate circle are going to change. But I'd like to think that also now I'm more involved. Like you see Tutu. Not just in Essex County where I live, but I'm branching out to other counties in New Jersey. So I know that's going to have an effect. That's going to have a ripple effect as well. So yeah. And I also always love getting the thank you cards from all of the students that I reach, that I speak to. That's always a wonderful thing. And some of the schools that I have spoken with, they have amplified their recyclable programs or even started. I know they have two schools that started recycle programs. So
Well, I like this idea of also being able to give different ways for children to impact what their parents
yeah.
or their older
Hmm.
peers or relatives do, because that can have a big effect. But it also helps to build something people talk about, self-efficacy.
That's right.
If I feel like I'm capable of doing something to make a difference, that's sort of like, I think, we talk a lot about getting to climate action. Well, you can't get to the action on climate until you have some kind of a relationship with it and understand it. And
Hmm.
I think some of the things that are even involved in the STEM related knowledge that you introduce children to and families to, can also lead to how we talk about those same kinds of scientific approaches to understanding climate change at a very concrete level. If something
Hmm.
happens when you do composting, I'm sure that there's something you see or you smell or
Yes,
there's some things that happen which you can talk about later in terms of implications for larger impacts in the climate.
absolutely.
Um, I'm interested also in what kinds of things um, you would encourage folks to incorporate in their stories. It's not just about whether or not the glaciers melt and the oceans are rising initially. It's
Hmm.
it's it's really getting them thinking about how they can have conversations about what we said before, how this impacts me, how this impacts our environment, what kinds of things is it teaching us about the science. But what would you encourage people to do in terms of creating more picture books, storybooks? I mean, is it just about the science, or is it more about the relationships that people have with themselves and the earth? I don't know. I
Absolutely.
just threw that out there.
Right. No, yeah, exactly. You understand the assignment bit. Yes, it's definitely about the relationships between the earth and the people and the community. And you can't ignore the actual culture, right? Like you have to take in consideration the culture and the heritage of of the community, of the black readers, of the black children, of the indigenous people. We can't tell these stories and ignore it if you want them to actually receive the message. So that's something that we can't shy away from. We can't. We have to absolutely embrace, highlight, and amplify the indigenous people, the black people, the heritage, the culture of the readers and the audience that we're trying to reach.
I think that's so important to keep in mind. And also, that there are all kinds of people who are coming to this conversation. I know informally, I've talked with you about some of the peers that are doing this work
Hmm.
in this space that you've met. Some of whom you've been on some other podcasts. You're getting really popular these days. But what are some of the things that we might be aware of in terms of other people or resources that you're learning about, especially those that may have been a surprise to you or that you
Yeah,
hadn't
for
expected
sure.
to sort of learn about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are so many more resources, I would say, today than there were 10 years ago when I started this journey, which is so delightful to see. Um, during this journey, some resources that I have stumbled upon and been connected with, they've been great. So I have to say that it's been wonderful to see an increase in Black people in this space because when I first started, as a green mom, so to speak, I was one of the few African American mothers. I think I was the only one, as at least locally, and oftentimes when I went into these Facebook groups. I've connected with over some of the resources. There's because we want to do the work, but we need the funding to do it. You know, and there's one in particular that does fund green green work, and that's the HBCU Green Fund. I've spoken with Felicia there, and there you can apply for grants, and they love supporting events and programming around around this space, around climate change specifically for Black children. So that's been amazing to, speak with them. I've also had a chance to sit down with Christine Taylor Butler. She's an author, and I want to mess it up. I think she's an MLK fellow at MIT. And she's had years of experience in the publishing world, both self published and published by major houses. And just to hear and share with her, getting out those stories, getting out those STEM, those climate change stories specifically for our children, for Black children, has been an effort. It's been such a journey for her. And she too was shared, how making sure we do actually highlight the culture and the heritage in these stories it serves everyone well. And she's been able to reach so many schools and STEM, and by sharing the STEM message and the climate change. So that was amazing to connect with her. And I definitely implore everyone. She has I think a best-selling series, The Lost Tribes. It's STEM, climate change, and it's actually targeted towards the middle school age, which is so amazing. Veronica Chapman, she just wrapped up Black Children's Book Week. I think it wrapped up on Saturday. So where she highlights Black authors that focus on Black children books, and she runs it all year round. So she has a virtual a virtual children's book museum where you can go on there and literally, it's so awesome. You can go on there and see your titles, click on the titles. She makes it very easy and accessible for these Black titles to get to the hands of Black children, which I think is amazing. And of course, don't forget Tutu's Green World. I have a website, www.tutusgreenworld.com. And on my website, I do blogs, weekly blogs. And you can also subscribe to my newsletter, which is free. And in the newsletter, I'm sharing, eco tips. I'm sharing green arts and crafts activities you can do with your children, green recipes you can do as a family. And also, I like to highlight, current events and Black environmentalists, as well as our history in this space, because that's something that like we said earlier, if we don't see ourselves, if we don't realize our role in this journey, in this fight, we don't see why we should pay attention. So I try to, on my website, I try to be a resource of green information, and definitely, check it out. Soon, 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 we hope to have an animation series or some sort of programming. But I do go on, we have what we call Tutu Tuesdays on Instagram. And that's a place where I have up there live taking questions. I call them your eco questions. You can ask any question, whether you think it might be silly or not. And I'm there to facilitate, all of everyone's environmental questions, because a lot of times we just don't know, and we don't know who to ask, or we might feel silly, like, something as simple as, what are carbon emissions? You hear it being used all the time. So I do that on Tuesdays on Instagram. It's called Tutu Tuesdays. So you can follow me at Tutu's Green World.
Well, I'm glad that we can actually do that. But what I'm also glad to say is that we know that these elements of climate and our environment impact everybody.
That's right.
But they disproportionately impact certain populations. And it's really heartening to hear you describe some of the ways in which your leadership and your entrepreneurship is helping to create some of these places and spaces where people can come. But they also represent what I refer to as the roots of representation. Each of these things are roots that sort of solidify or anchor what we're really trying to do, because we want all of our fellow and eco-friendly people around us to lock arms and do the things that we need to do to have the kind of earth and that we want to have, and to support each other as we address these challenges.
Absolutely.
I'm really glad that you included those resources that people can tap into, and we will definitely want to make sure that we're including those on our website. and we'll have a space
Okay.
that will allow people to see some of the things that you identified, and possibly we can have some additional conversations that will take us to the next level. So you've really provided us with some essential information and perspectives that I think help to build the STEM-related knowledge and build it into children's climate change literature in ways that I think are appropriate and accessible. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and also serving as one of our major advisors on our Black Rep for Kids project. And we're going to look forward to continuing this conversation as we work towards our next event in the fall, where we will be able to hopefully showcase some of the kinds of things that you're already engaged in, and bringing together some of those other individuals with whom you spoke. Are there any other thoughts you'd like to share before we close out today?
Yeah, I would actually. We have a ethos or motto at Tutu's Green World, and it's small acts make big impacts. And that's something that I would love to leave with our audience, is that every small action that you do, or you can take a small act every day and make a major impact on our planet, on our children, in our community. It's that small action has trickle effects that make big impacts. So as we continue our days, as we continue today, and our days and our weeks and our months, just keep that in mind. A small act makes big impact.
Well, I think you're sending us off with something that very concretely can help us all. So thank you once again to Lonnie Thomas for being with us on Roots of Representation as we look at Black-centered climate story worlds for young minds. We'll look forward to being in touch, and we hope everyone will go to the website to learn more.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Roots of Representation. If you'd like to comment on this episode, please head over to blackrepforkids.knowledge.org. Our website also contains free resources and more information about the project, which is led by Knowledge in collaboration with the Highlights Foundation, the National Black Child Development Institute, the Association of Children's Museums, and a panel of nationally recognized advisors. Remember, Black Rep for Kids isn't just a podcast. It's an essential part of the project's culminating experience, which will be a 2-day unconference event held in fall 2024. Head over to the website to register now. And in the meantime, let's keep the conversation going. You can also share your ideas and resources for amplifying Black voices and stories in children's STEM literature at blackrepforkids.knowledge.org. Roots of Representation is produced by ABF Creative, an award-winning podcast network that creates cultural and emotional connections through podcasts. The series is funded by the National Science Foundation's Advancing Informal STEM Learning Program under grant number 2314101. Any opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this podcast series are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Science Foundation. Roots of Representation, the podcast centering Black climate story worlds for young minds.